Okay, let's open in a word of prayer. Father, thank you so much for the day today. We pray that you will bless our time together, that you will assist us in trying to make sense of some of the insane things that are going on in the world and try to piece them together in light of Bible prophecy. Bless us today in Jesus' name, amen. Well, let me start off. So today I'm going to call it just scratching the surface. I say this almost every week now. Brian and Mike back here do a great job on our video. I'm getting a little bit of feedback on the mic. I say this almost every week is like, I don't even have slides for half of the stuff I would like to talk about because it's hard to put all the graphics and everything together. So I'm just really going to scratch the surface today. I'm going to I'll refer you to some other sources. I'll try to include those in what we call the show notes below the title slide. Currently we are on these platforms. We are live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. We'll also be posting more regularly to Remnant Truth Network. Blog Talk Radio puts just the audio up. If you want to do that, go to Blog Talk Radio and look for Christian Sentinel channel. You can also just subscribe to the podcast, the audio only. And then Rumble, we're on Real FBC. So let me just explain to you a little bit about what happened this week. About Wednesday, I think it was, I got notice that we had received a content warning strike against our YouTube channel because I had discussed, it was based on a video that I had done on March 28th. So they said, well, it violated our medical misinformation policy. I went back and looked. You can appeal these, but because we had gotten a warning before, because I had talked about some things related to social credit, I'm not going to even use the word because it'll trigger the bots. I used the video Naomi Wolf a couple times, and those videos have both received, that video received a warning. And it says, you're trying to stop people from getting something, or you're suggesting alternative. And I posted the COVID guidelines that YouTube has come up with. They're probably 3 or 4 pages long about what you're allowed and not allowed to talk about. But I looked at what I'd said, and I did none of this. So, but the restriction was you can't post or live stream for a week, which means that it would shut down Sunday service, the Bible study portions, the sermon, and other things that we put up. So I appealed, and within about a couple hours, YouTube had removed the strike against the channel. But the warning is you get like 3 strikes in 90 days, and they just remove your channel. Now, some friends of mine, Derek Gilbert, Josh Peck, post things at a YouTube channel. It was a YouTube channel called Skywatch TV. And Josh had done a video on sex trafficking, child sex trafficking. They didn't get 3 strikes, a warning and 3 other strikes. Their entire channel was removed. And they said that apparently Josh had cyberbullied the people who were accused of child sex trafficking. I mean, just process this now. Do you understand the Orwellian world that we live in? So right now, Rumble is sort of the go-to channel. So if I'm going to talk about certain things in our life that we've been dealing with over the last year, I'm going to probably post those just on Rumble. And the reason for that is it's not that I'm scared, it's just that YouTube has a bigger reach than any of the other channels that we're on. That's just a fact. It also has, I think, a better user interface, although if you'll notice, they're posting ads on everything now, and part of that is they post ads on there. We have no control over those. We do not monetize our channel. And part of the reason that Google does that, I think, Google, is that they try to annoy people enough that they will buy the $12.99 a month ad-free subscription to YouTube. Now there are other, by the way, there are other browsers that you can use that have ad blockers built in, like the Brave browser and that type of thing, if you want to get around that. But it's just this game that we have to play all the time. And I think we don't want to lose the opportunity to use a large platform like that to post sermons and Bible study teachings and that type of thing. So that's why I'm going to not talk about a couple of this one subject in particular, because we want to preserve that. I mean, we've got about 42,000 subscribers to our channel. It's taken a while to build up to that. If you want to subscribe and like, that always helps. Like I said, we do not monetize our channel at all. We don't get anything from the ads that Google and YouTube have started putting on everybody's channel. So, but we're sort of in that gray zone that, we are, all of us that use social media, particularly some of the big platforms, we are in, what could I say? We're being trained by our tech overlords as to what we can and cannot say. I mean, this is true. If I talked about certain events that have happened in recent American history, this thing is gone. And look, there's plenty of information out there that you can find at Rumble, YouTube. But it's a game that we're in, but it's a pretty serious game in terms of content. And who knows where they're going to stop with anything. So just understand that that's the case, that it's not that we're scared of them or anything, but we do have investment in time in building that, or having that been built up over time. And the other platforms just don't have the reach that the big main platforms of Facebook and YouTube have. But understand that eventually all Christian channels are going to disappear from there. So get used to finding us on Rumble at Real FBC, all one word, Real FBC, Remnant Truth Network, rtntv.org. And then the podcast, the Blog Talk Radio, Christian Sentinel. I can just tell you, by the way, a friend of mine named David Fiorazzo, I am a fairly regular guest on his radio program. I did a couple of shows last month on consecutive days. I'm going to do, I think it's June 14th. I'll be the next time I'm on his program. It's at 10 a.m. Eastern. It's streamed live, but it's also a podcast. But he wrote a book. I would highly recommend that you get it, called Canceling Christianity. You can find it on, might be trouble finding it on Amazon sometimes, but he tried to run ads for it I get these things from Facebook all the time myself. Spend $10 and boost the flow of information to your channel. Now, we've not done that yet to your Facebook page, because I guess they would look at it. It would be good for the Facebook people to look at what we put up, but I also think that it would lead to more banning and that type of thing. So I don't do the ads, but he submitted 4 ads for his book, which is just essentially telling everybody what's going on in the world and culture, and they've all been rejected by Facebook. They won't even, I don't understand a platform that's based on advertising revenue that refuses advertising for something that's talking about something that's actually going on and happening. It's sort of an insane business model, but they're worth billions, and I'm not. So today, again, I'm just going to scratch the surface a little bit. Okay, let's start off with this. I started to talk, some of this will be some things I started to talk about last week but didn't finish. And then there will be a lot of things this week that I'm not even going to talk about, because I don't want to tell you that I didn't have time to do them. But we are in this very strange world. Those of us who are conservatives and Christians are having difficulty, increasing difficulty, getting our message out and talking about things. Even the major conservative media platforms are constantly attacked. I know Dennis Prager at Prager University. I think I would recommend everything on that website. They got, I think, 2 billion views last year on Prager University channel. They put everything up for free, but they're constantly being banned by Google or YouTube because of their content. So there's going to be, I'm sure there's going to be litigation and that type of thing, but understand that with the current regime in charge in Washington, nothing's going to change in the near term. And one of the things is on this, Girls Will Be Boys. This is the title of the article in the Claremont Review of Books. I was reading the New York Times this morning. It is Pride Month. Should we call it Christianity Month? Maybe we should just start attacking them where they live. I don't know if I have a picture of it, but the U.S. Embassy, I apologize because my stuff is really, usually out of order, but this week it's really bad. And I don't see the picture. I'm sure I did it. Well, any event, the U.S. embassies were given permission by the Biden administration this week to fly a couple different flags if the ambassador decided to do so. About 30 embassies around the United States flew the Black Lives Matter flag. Now listen, the phrase Black Lives Matter is not bothersome to me at all. But the organization is a radical, leftist, Marxist, anarchist organization. They mask what they are doing. There are even people who were in their hierarchy now who are coming out and saying, they don't care about what the people identified in the title of the organization. They don't care about them. They've scrubbed their website. You can still find it at archive.org if you know how to just take the current URL about their statement of purpose or whatever they call it, similar to a statement of belief for a church, and go back and look at that at archive. They said that their goal was to destroy the nuclear family, the Judeo-Christian nuclear family. Now, this should not be surprised. This has been coming in the evangelical church for a while. And now I cannot remember their last names, Alan and Deb. Deb spoke at the Grace Brethren National Conference 4 years ago. And during that, this is a church conference, a seminar at the church conference, and she says, the evangelical church needs to get over its idolatry of the nuclear family. She actually said that. I have the audio. I'm telling you, if somebody had said that here, they're not only is their mic shut off, they're off the platform like that. Well, as quickly as I can get up here. They're out of here. You do know, and I also researched this at, it's called Urbana. It's a big college, is it InterVarsity that does the Urbana conference? They used to hold it in Urbana, Illinois during Christmas break. A few years ago, they moved to St. Louis. And Deb's book was the featured book to give out at the InterVarsity Urbana Conference. So we can rail against Black Lives Matter and the nonsense they put out, but we need to understand that a lot of this stuff, whether it started in the church or outside the church and came in, I don't care. The fact of the matter is that it's a cancer in the church and it needs to be eradicated. This is all, everything that I say, I have in past videos, as you know, have documented and shown you videos and audio of exactly what I'm talking about. And now we have this boys will be girls thing that's coming into the church as well. Let me just read a little bit. It talks about the things that happened in Washington, D.C. back in early January. And I would mention, I was reading the New York Times today, the article of Martina Navratilova. She came out as a lesbian long time ago. But she objected to males competing in older women tennis tournaments. Biological males. She has been drummed out of a lot of the gay alliance organizations that she belonged to because she had the audacity to do that. Now, I find it a little bit delicious to watch the battles that are going on in the crazy side, the craziness of the left. It's kind of enjoyable as a spectator sport. But you need to understand that they don't even... It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. So here is... So they talk about what happened in Washington, and here is what the author of this article says. It is Mary Eberstadt at the Claremont Review of Books. Even so, she says, after discussing the events in D.C. in early January, the existence of a manic cult with deep roots in social media should not really surprise anyone, least of all conservatives. After all, the Western world has been living for years with another all-encompassing belief system lodged on the other side of the political spectrum. This one, too, bustles with energy, online communities, constant updates, branches in other countries, and fascinating, albeit Byzantine storylines. It, too, has generated robust merchandising wings. Its chatter is also constant, earnest and self-absorbed, boosterish, Manichean, empirically insolvent, punitive toward unbelievers. Above all, it too is a craze unthinkable without the internet. The difference from the political QAnon, it never penetrated the medical establishment, elite mainstream media, entertainment industry, academia, public schools, corporations, polite society, churches, all three branches of the federal government, increasingly the American legal system. The other craze has. And then they go on to talk about the trans kids movement. They note the work of Dr. Paul McHugh, who I don't even know if he's a Christian, but I've cited his work a number of times over the past 5 or 6 years as this become an increasingly problem. He was the lead psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins Medical School in Baltimore. They were the first medical facility to ever do sex reassignment surgery. After much research, Dr. McHugh led the charge there since he left to stop doing those surgeries, because what they found was that the people who had the surgeries were, based on their research, up to 20 times more likely to commit suicide after the surgery than they were before. In what kind of world, this is a rhetorical question, in what kind of world is medical treatment that results in that tolerated, encouraged, even pushed on kids? It was 2 weeks ago today, you should look it up. I think it was 2 weeks ago, Leslie Stahl did a segment on 60 Minutes. And it started off, I thought, oh, she's just going to support this movement. But after a few minutes of talking about it, she started interviewing people, teenagers who had been transitioned or started the transition process with hormones and surgery to another sex after sometimes less than 30 minutes of interviews with a psychiatrist or medical doctor. They were never told the risk, and there were dozens of these that Leslie interviewed and talked to for her show that have detransitioned. Sometimes they've tried to go back to being a male after they've had their male parts removed. And they talked about the extreme pain that they were in as a result of the transition surgery. Listen, folks, this kind of stuff only happens in a very highly sophisticated, organized religious cult. It is a religion. It is a false religion. It is anti-God. It is anti-science. And it's very easy to get just completely lambasted. So I would highly recommend you go read this article. It talks about books that people have written about this based on science and studies, and they're banned from Amazon. One of the books is this, a book by Deborah So, The End of Gender, Debunking the Myths About Sex and Identity in Our Society. It's very interesting. Her dedication of that book is this: for everyone who blocked me on Twitter. This is what happens. I do read through some of the comments on tweets that I look at. It's not a place to get an encouraging view of the world. We're way down the road on this thing. I continually ask people, well, what did you think the end times were going to look like? I ask myself that. So here is a segment from Special Report the other night on Fox, Bret Baier. And Fox, they do a good job sometimes, so we ought to recognize that. One of the diversity heads at Google had to resign because he had made anti-Semitic comments that people found. So they do police themselves a little bit eventually. But understand, do you think that's the only guy there that holds those views? And what are they going to do? So Caroline Glick made a good point in one of her columns recently. She said, we're storing everything at the Israeli government's storing everything in the cloud at Amazon and Google. And by the way, if you want to know what the cloud is, go drive down from New Albany down to Pataskala. Have you seen those buildings out there? How many? Anybody out there? They're like 2 football fields long. They look like airplane hangars for big airplanes. It's a Google server farm. They're spending $600 million on these things. Just drive down towards south of New Albany off of, what's the road? Beach Road and Mink. I think it's between those 2 roads, south of New Albany. It's unbelievable. So that's the cloud. That's where all the things are stored. So Israel's storing things in the cloud. How long are they going to when are they going to turn their ideology into action and get rid of those things that people are storing in the cloud? They've already done it. That's how they got rid of Parler. So here's Bret Baier's report on Special Report the other night about a teacher in Leesburg, Virginia, Loudoun County, what he said he was going to do to the school board and what happened to him.
A school district in Northern Virginia is getting pushback from parents tonight over the punishment for a teacher who expressed his religious beliefs regarding transgender policies at a public school board meeting. Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel has details tonight from Leesburg, Virginia.
A suspended gym teacher at this Leesburg, Virginia school is fighting in court for reinstatement to his position.
We love our free speech, and teachers are just like everybody else. We have political views, we have religious views, and we like to advocate for those views and not be punished for it.
Last Friday, Tanner Cross was put on leave after expressing his religious beliefs at a school board meeting focused on proposed transgender school policies.
I'm a teacher, but I serve God first, and I will not affirm that a biological boy can be a girl and vice versa because it's against my religion.
Cross considers that a violation of his First Amendment rights and creating an atmosphere of fear after speaking at an event seeking opinions of parents and community members. A spokesman for the school system telling Fox the contents of personnel files are confidential under state and federal law. I cannot comment other than to say Mr. Cross is on administrative leave with pay. Some parents suggest Cross's apparent punishment is part of a disturbing trend.
He spoke in a public conference where they asked for public comment. He spoke off the clock in his own time, and that's free speech. And if we start controlling free speech, what else are they going to start controlling?
This is the latest controversy for the suburban Washington school system, which is also under fire for pushing what critics say is the controversial critical race theory curriculum. But county officials say their policies are all about inclusiveness.
Our equity programs and our professional development for teachers is not about bringing one student down or elevating another student. Our equity efforts are about providing a world-class education for all of our students.
Other parents we talked to today say they are rallying behind Tanner Cross, calling this retaliation by the school system with the goal of intimidating their teachers. Brett?
Mike Emanuel, Leesburg, Virginia.
You know that Tanner Cross, for the last 5 or 6 months, has attended a Calvary Chapel called Cornerstone Church or Cornerstone Chapel in that area. Pastor Gary Hamrick. In fact, when this happened to Tanner Cross, Pastor Gary did not even know that the guy was attending his church. And then people at the church said, well, yeah, that guy goes to our church. Because it's a very large church. The leftists in the DC media and the school board and everything have now, because Pastor Gary came out in support of Tanner Cross, they have come after the pastor demanding that he retract his statements. Do you understand, again, what did you think the end times are going to look like, my friends? How far down the road do you think we really are in this thing? Now, look, we all want to get out of here, right? But we're here until it's time for us to leave. So toughen up, stand firm, support each other. Because and a number of people, I think Matt Walsh and some other, I think there's a blog called Cripplegate, and I even saw a thing from Dr. John MacArthur. And again, when I mention somebody like that, I'm not endorsing everything that somebody has said. I'm just saying I'm giving him credit for making a good point. And they said, listen, what this is about ultimately is the Ten Commandments. Because what they are trying to do to Tanner Cross, what they are trying to do to Pastor Gary Hamrick, and many others, is to force you to lie and violate God's law. To call a boy a girl and vice versa when you know it's not true. Part of the whole thing about the critical race theory training is to get you to admit that you're a racist when you're not. This is what's going on. It has the full-throated support of a lot of people that have themselves fenced in our nation's capital. Now, it's going to continue, but stand up to it. Remember Pastor Mike one time said, if you do that, what's the worst thing they can do to you? Kill you. But we're not to fear someone who can kill us. We're to fear the one who can destroy both what? Body and soul in hell forever. We're to fear God, not man, not the devil. Because the devil, he's limited. He can only kill you. So just remember, I mean, that's not a comforting message, I guess, for a nice Sunday morning. By the way, you all know what happened at the golf tournament yesterday, right? When the leader had to quit because of a positive test for a certain thing that I'm not really allowed to talk about. I got the dispatch this morning online. It was not in the published dispatch. It didn't even mention it. This is a huge deal in Dublin and Columbus, Ohio today. The guy leading the tournament by 6 strokes had to withdraw. He would have won. He was just crushing the course that Jack Nicklaus thought he tricked up to make more difficult, and spent millions doing it. If he won today, he would have got $1.67 million. So it's a big deal. But I could not find it mentioned in the published version of the Dispatch this morning. I don't know. It's crazy. I don't subscribe to that thing. Here's a new thing. China allows couples to have 3 children. Why? China is dying off demographically because of their one-child policy. Their population is going to drop by the hundreds of millions in this generation. That's a big deal. So I see this happening all over the world in all these different cultures, and I'm thinking like that sort of leads me to believe that the things of the end times are going to happen sooner rather than later, because some of these countries that are mentioned are powerful, but they're losing population like crazy. Europe, Persia, Iran, Russia, China. So China had a one-child policy, forced abortions if you tried to have a second baby. There's story after story out there that you can find about what China did to people. The China that seems to have a lot of influence with some people in our government. Fact. It's a fact. You can't deny it. 5 years ago, China adopted a 2-child policy. What happened? In the words of one in the Financial Times in the UK, it was a giant nothing burger, because they had trained their people not to have more than 1 child, or even to have no child. So what do you think is going to happen with their 3-child policy? Every expert I saw said it's going to be a giant nothing burger, because China has gone they didn't even understand the consequences. Why? Because they're operating like a lot of other governments and world leaders now in the Romans 1 world, where God has given them over to a reprobate mind, where they have lost the ability to reason. So the old axiom that God gives us the leaders that we deserve also applies to God gives the leaders the mind or lack of a mind that they deserve for doing such things. I'm sure this will work out. EU is to unveil a digital wallet for citizens. It's just good. We want to be able to sign on to Amazon and Google and have everything in one place and have all your medical records and all of this. What is this backdooring? It's backdooring the social credit system of China. Control. Because as Naomi said in that interview, once they get the system structure in place, they just can kind of flick a little switch to turn on and off parts of it. Although once they turn parts of it on, they're never going to do this. And look, it'll be sold as a convenience. You know that if you go to the store and you're fumbling through 50, frequent buyer cards and credit card and money and all the, coupon, couldn't we just have it all? Couldn't you just put it all on my phone? Sure, they'll do that, but maybe they'll even say you don't even need a phone to do this. And people are scared about this. Now, this is also concerning. I got this from Popular Mechanics. Scientists say they finally sequenced the entire human genome. Yes, all of it. It also came out of a magazine called Stat. It sequenced the entirety of the human genome, including the missing parts. And there's an article that's coming out soon, The Complete Sequence of a Human Genome. Now, it's interesting, if you look near the conclusion of that article, it makes kind of an interesting statement. The complete telomere to telomere assembly of a human genome marks a new era of genomics where no region of the genome is beyond reach. Prior updates to the human reference genome have been incremental, and the high cost of switching to a new assembly has outweighed the marginal gains for many researchers. So it says here, this 8% of the genome has not been overlooked due to lack of importance, but rather due to technological limitations. It also says in here that one of the things, though, there's sort of one other thing that they haven't really done is they haven't factored in a genome with the Y chromosome. So I looked up Y chromosome. There's a great little infographic there about Y chromosomes and what the facts are. I just found this kind of interesting, this part in the middle, number 5. The Y chromosomes is 1/3 the size of the X chromosome. It contains about 50 genes, while the X chromosomes has about 900 genes. So what if you're XY? What are you? Male. So I'm sure that this, I know that you can make all sorts of jokes about this, that I knew that men were not that complex. The Y thing only has 50 chromosomes, and the X has 900, which, I don't know if she's back there, my dear wife of 46 years as of last Monday. I can assure you that she's got all 900 plus 900. And I'm trying to figure out with my 900 plus 50. Now they say that the males have their genes, these genes scattered elsewhere. But like, I'm sort of, if you're a male like me, finding your keys and trying to find your keys, how am I going to find those other 900 genes or 850? But so if you want to go home today and say, yeah, I told you women are more complex than men, that's not stating much of anything based on my research. They are. They're wonderful, fearfully and wonderfully made, but a little too complex to figure out in my book. That's why we never get bored with the other person, supposedly. You understand I'm kind of joking, sort of, kind of, maybe a little. Please forgive me, Pam. I'm only working with those 50 chromosomes on the Y, and that's why I do stupid things like that. Okay, this comes from a publication from Canada. You can find, if you want the whole report, you can go to horizons.gc.ca. And this is just, this is again one of these, how many times a week are you going to get your prophetic Bible prophecy mind blown? A new publication from the Government of Canada exploring biodigital convergence. So we will give them the Guest Prophecy Updater Award this week. Guest Speaker Award for coming up with the convergence, using the convergence thing that we've been using for probably 8 years here. Exploring biodigital convergence. Now there are some things that are scattered through the report. It's 100, maybe 80, 100 pages. But here's one, the summary page. And it has this, listen to what biological digital convergence is opening up strikingly new ways to, read this, change human beings, our bodies, minds, and behaviors, change or create other organisms, alter ecosystems, sense, store, process, and transmit information, manage biological innovation, structure and manage production and supply chains. Now, I would suggest if you really want us to believe you can do this, we have some supply chains problems in the world right now. Go fix them. But do you understand, again, I would ask you if you know and there's a lot of controversy about what the mark of the beast is or isn't. But it does seem to have a technological base to it of some kind. But it also has a religious, a mind, and a belief system to it as well. And what does the second one or third one, fourth one down? Oh, change human beings, our bodies, minds, and behaviors. Interesting. Here's how this flows, that it is emerging. Number one, full physical integration of biological and digital entities. Digital technology can be embedded in organisms, and biological components can exist in parts of digital technologies. Co-evolution of biological and digital technologies. Number three, conceptual convergence of biological and digital systems. And it asks the question, why explore biodigital convergence now? I know part of the reason. That's revelation. There are enough signals to give shape to potential biodigital futures. These signals suggest that biosciences and biotechnology may be at the cusp of a period of rapid expansion, possibly analogous to digital computing circa 1985. And met some old friends this week, and I was talking about how Pam and I met and first heard of her through a magazine. Now, a magazine is a paper thing that come in the mail that you would pick up, and it had printing on the page and pictures, sort of like a portable website. And I met her through an article that she had written. And then I talked about when I proposed, and I went to talk to her again about maybe she misunderstood what I said. That's a long story. And I went to the dorm, and I had to buzz her down because we didn't have phones in our dorm rooms. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't, it was work. Remember when you had to pay like $15 for a long distance phone call? Okay, but listen, so that was 1972. I think I got my first cell phone in 1994. Got my first computer at work in 1993, I remember that. I'd had a terminal to do legal research, just legal research before that, because that's all it would do. 1200 baud modem. Do you remember what that was like? Waiting for the sentence to appear letter by letter on the screen. The black and white for phosphor. That was 30, what, 20 years, 30 years, less than 30 years ago. It's changed quite a bit. Now they're saying we're going to do this with biotechnology. I'm sure there will be nothing done incorrectly or unethically, because the people in science are highly ethical, as we've just seen from certain emails that were released this week, right? Okay, last week I talked about this Think Tank 2022. This comes from the Universal Church, the Moonies. And they had this kind of they're great at the technology thing. Look at the Zoom, it looks like an audience there. I think it's kind of creepy in a way. And I love technology, but I'm like, and you see the thumbs up and the hearts and all the stuff that are flowing through. Here's their video about what they're trying to do with their Rallies of Hope and Think Tank 2002.
I have a dream. We all want peace. The
question is, how are we going to achieve it?
Of building partnership for peace, interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universal values.
In the same spirit, Father Moon and Mother Moon are the true parents. As a divine couple, they are manifest in this world. Let peace be upon them.
공생공영 혼이 통일된 인류 한 가족의 공동체.
Okay, so listen, that creeps me out. So they had speakers, Dan Quayle, Mike Pompeo, a number of politicos, and then this, I said I would try to play it this week. So I'm going to play it, and if you don't like it, tough. Go talk to the people that did it.
I'm Jonathan Falwell, and today I'd like to talk about some definite needs for our world. As you know, there's much division in our world today, and clearly more than ever, we need a common ground for people of faith, patriotism, education, and service. This rally of hope aims to meet that need as a call for prayer, for unity, and for courage in the face of unprecedented challenges. I want to thank UPF and Dr. Moon for making these events available throughout the world. And I thank all of those who are viewing together in this digital environment. May you all be blessed with God's grace, God's wisdom, as we attempt to make this world a better place. Today, as we all reflect on what this world needs, one word seems to stand out more than any other, and that word is hope. And I thank the UPF and Dr. Moon for giving the opportunity for us to talk about this from many different
Okay, now listen, let me ask you a question. Do those sound like prepared remarks or off-the-cuff remarks? I mean, do you think he gave some thought to those before he did that? Does it appear that he's reading from a prepared script? Many years ago, I heard a story about some lady who was talking to Jonathan Falwell's father, Jerry Falwell, who was speaking at their Baptist church someplace in the South, and she said, "Father or Dr. Falwell, there's things going on in this church. I can't stand it." And he said, "Well, then leave." And she goes, "I can't. My grandmother's buried in the graveyard next to the church." And Dr. Falwell said, "Well, madam, if what you say is true about what's going on here, you should leave. And if she could, she'd get up and leave with you because of the false teaching." So, how long did that take? One generation. Now, Jonathan Falwell may do tons and tons and tons of things that are good, that are solid. But I'm looking at, okay, here's one more, because people said this is not him, this is a digital creation. I think this is real, okay?
Distinguished leaders, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to join you once again for this Global Rally of Hope, the sixth such event sponsored by the Universal Peace Federation. And I am honored to support the vital mission of UPF and join you in the great cause of building a more peaceful and prosperous world, and call upon China to respect human rights, democratic principles, the freedom of navigation, and do their part to achieve the final and fully verified denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and the people of the United States for nearly 70 years. And they're the same values that my father...
Okay, you get the point? Now here's a lady, she tweeted this. She's a presenter, or was a presenter from the BBC. And she was using the hashtag talking about what's going on in Israel and Gaza. Hashtag pound, Hitler was right. The BBC will never fire me because they understand the difference between a white person tweeting Hitler was right to uphold white supremacy versus a black or brown person tweeting Hitler was right in a struggle against colonialism. Okay? Didn't have time to pull it together. You can find it on a lot of the conservative blogs. Wait, I do have a picture of it. Here it is. It was, you might want to zoom in on that center one. It's just a poster. And it's called, this is done at Yale University. Or they discussed this at Yale. This is a forensic psychiatrist and psychoanalyst. Virtual talk. It's made private now, but I've got a copy of the video, or the audio. Barry Weiss, who's no real conservative, posted this. She left the New York Times because they were attacking her being Jewish. The title of the talk, presented by Yale School of Medicine's Department of Child Studies Center, the title of the talk was The Psychopathic Problem of the White Mind. And in this talk, this doctor, whose name is there, talked about, it's all I can do not to take a gun and shoot it through the head of a white person that I see. I'm not making this up. Go to Barry Weiss' blog. I think it's over at Subsplash, and you can find that. It's mind-blowing. So let's talk a little bit. Now, this is going to be kind of jumbled up because there were a lot of things happening in the Middle East this week. I want to go through a few things. So we know that, and I'm going to make some comments that might offend you, but I don't care. I really don't. Because I think we're in a very serious situation here with Israel and some of the reaction to it. Israel had an election. Elections have consequences. Netanyahu got 31 seats. So just understand that Israel has a parliamentary system. If you get above a certain threshold, I think it comes out, they sort of take all the people that voted, they divide it by 120, and you have to be able to get 4 seats in the Knesset. So the percentage ends up being somewhere around 4%, 4 to 5%. So if you get 4 to 5% of the vote, you get 4 people from your party in the Knesset to vote on who's going to be prime minister. If you get 1 vote short of that, you get 0. Now, some people say it's kind of a crazy way to do it, that they need to increase it where you have to get 12 seats or 15 or 20 seats to be able to go forward. But they'll never, I just don't see them ever changing it because the people in the smaller parties, they get something as a benefit for that. So for this was the 4th election they've had in the last 2 years. Netanyahu got 31. He was able, through cobbling together a coalition, he was able to get to 59 votes. He needs to get to 61 Knesset members to declare him to be prime minister. Naftali Bennett in the center at the Yamina party, who used to be part of Likud and who was Netanyahu's chief of staff back in the 90s. He's a tech multimillionaire, conservative, said he was head of the settler movement, even though at the time he lived in a suburb of Tel Aviv. But he's an Orthodox religious Jew. He would be the most religious Jewish leader of Israel if he becomes prime minister. Yair Lapid on the left, his party got 17 seats. And then this is Mansour Abbas on the right, who is the head of the Ram party. It's an Arab Islamist party. They got 4 seats. Now, you need to be crystal clear that when Netanyahu was trying to cobble his coalition together, he had Mansour Abbas on his list as well. He was going to bring him into his coalition to get over the top. Now listen, if you take all the conservative parties and add them together, center-right and right parties, they would have somewhere around 65 or 70 or 75 votes. But Netanyahu's been around for a long time, and the statement that familiarity breeds contempt is true in politics. He burned a lot of bridges. He had a big falling out with Naftali Bennett, and Naftali Bennett went off and formed the Yamina party, took another Likud member, Ayelet Shaked, who's an attorney, was a justice minister under Netanyahu in the very recent past. They have a party. They got 7 seats in the election. So what they did was they took this party and they tried to form a coalition. Before I get into that, I got to mention one more thing, because I don't have the report, but you should look this up. This is from cfam.org, Center for Family and Human Rights. They reviewed a recent UNICEF report. Now remember, Skywatch got taken down because of the video that they did. UNICEF comes out and essentially says, look, and I have a copy of the report, all this stuff about pornography being harmful to children, even children as young as 5 or 6, is not really, well, we really don't have good research to support that claim. Do you understand what they said? It's okay to show pornography to kids. We don't have any proof that it really harms them. And you see videos now of children talking about self-pleasuring that are like 5 or 6 years old that are on videos to play in kindergarten and are being played in New York schools. And that's permitted. But in Loudoun County, Virginia, if you say, I'm not going to call a boy, a girl if it's a boy, you get fired. So, question again, how far down the road of this end times thing do you think we really are? And I see people up there looking at their watches. How far down the road is he to finishing up his update for today? I can see you out there. No, I'm just kidding. So they've got this. So they cobbled together a coalition. They have 61 votes. Now that only includes right now 6 of the 7 Yamina party votes. The way Lapid is sort of the lead guy, he's left of center, I think, is a fair statement. I think he's a supporter of the two-state solution. I don't think I would call him a Zionist. So they cobble together this Arab Islamist party, the Lapid, and some of the left-wing parties, and some of the right-wing parties, including Israel Our Home, Avigdor Lieberman, who really hates Netanyahu. And the thing that really unites all of these parties to form this coalition is they want to get rid of Netanyahu. So now it appears that by one of the things that they've tried to do is they wanted to change the Speaker of the Knesset, but that's a member of Likud, but they couldn't get the 61 votes to do that because 2 of the people in the Yamina party, Naftali Bennett's party, would not sign the agreement to change the Speaker. So that it's a very fragile coalition. One of those people, they say, may resign, but maybe he won't. And he will vote against the government formation. Now, they'll still have 61, but what if this guy who didn't want to change the Speaker votes against the government? Now it's 60 and they don't win. And the whole thing falls apart and they go to another election unless somebody can cobble a coalition together. The coalition could have come together, but Lieberman and some others they can't stand Netanyahu, so they won't join any coalition where he would end up being prime minister. So maybe another election, maybe the coalition gets done. Bennett is supposed to be the first party, but understand, Naftali Bennett got 7 votes, 7 seats out of 120 in the Knesset. Netanyahu got 31. The next biggest was 17 with Lapid. So here the next prime minister of Israel will only have about 8.6% of the total Knesset members as from his own party, and he will be prime minister. I think we can all agree that this is just a crazy system. But it's not going to change. There are Orthodox parties on the right side of the ledger, and they want to maintain their own thing because they get benefits from that. They don't have to serve in the military. They can stay at home. They can study Torah. They get paid to not work. And they also help Israel demographically because they have a lot of babies. And if you've been through some of these Orthodox neighborhoods in Jerusalem and elsewhere in Israel, you know what I mean. There's baby carriages everywhere. And a lot of times it's a couple carrying a baby that's pushing a baby carriage with another one in it. And a bunch of other little ones. I think I told you the story of the guy walking through the old city. He was talking on his cell phone. He was pushing a stroller with 2 kids in it, and he had 4 or 5 hanging on his side that were all under the age of 6. And he's talking to his wife. She's probably at home in labor. I'm not exaggerating. And that's changing the demographics of Israel. All of this stuff about the Arabs are the same number as Jews in Israel. You go to these Arab cities in Judea and Samaria, what's called the West Bank. You can find the videos out there. They go over to these places in the middle. There's nobody around. There are homes there, but they're all living in America or someplace. I'm telling you, I've seen this with my own eyes. And these are nice homes. But there's no people there. We were someplace next to one of these when we went to the Tel at Ai, the biblical city of Ai. I didn't see a person in this rather large neighborhood of very nice homes that would be homes that you would expect to find in like Orange County or Beverly Hills, California. Nice suburb. I didn't see a soul in that whole area in the hours that we were there. And this happened multiple places that we went. So, so what's happening is, this is kind of significant. This is an article from Jerusalem Post. You just need to go read the Jerusalem Post and some of these other newspapers to kind of figure out what's going on. But the changing of the guards all at once. There's a lot of things. So, we think there's a lot of things going on in the United States. There's even more going on in Israel. And the whole thing is kind of chaos. And I was talking to Bill Caney, texting with him this week, and I agree with Bill that when we don't fully support Israel, whatever chaos is going there is going to be at least as great here in the United States. It happens. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. If at best, that's the best case scenario, that it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Sometimes it's even worse. So they have the Attorney General, they have the judiciary, a lot of those people in the Supreme Court and the judiciary, which is really taking over Israel even more than some of than the problems we have. They've essentially made it so that, here the president gets to appoint someone to the Supreme Court and it's confirmed by the Senate. And we know how that's going now. Those things used to be 98-2 votes. Now they're 51-49 or 51-50 because we're so divided. Well, in Israel, the Supreme Court has determined that, we get to appoint our replacements. And they're very left-wing by and large. So who do you think they're going to appoint to replace themselves? Conservatives? No, they're going to do other activists. And the way they misinterpret the law is they have these things called basic laws in Israel, not necessarily like a constitution like we have. And they just say, this law, this one is superior to this basic law. So we don't have, you can't do this basic law. It's insanity. It really is insanity. So there was hope that if Netanyahu got another coalition together, that they would be able to change that law to change how the Supreme Court is appointed, because it's also a problem with the Attorney General and some of the, frankly, fake charges that have been lodged against Netanyahu. They're made up. And so this is the way political systems have gone. So they go after the leader with these trumped up, for lack of a better term, criminal charges. And the same thing's happening here in the United States. Except if you're part of a political party, you can store your emails on a public server, avoid Freedom of Information Act requests, and avoid it. By the way, on these school boards things that are putting in these policies, there was a lady on Tucker the other night, she's from Rhode Island. I think she was on Thursday night. Great interview, very intelligent lady. Clearly making use of all of her extra genes that she has. And she said, listen, everybody, every school district, go to your state, figure out the Freedom of Information, Public Records Act, and file Public Records or Freedom of Information Act requests on every school board in the country and make them produce the documents that make up their curriculum. She spoke out against this critical race theory at the school board meeting, and guess what happened? School board members started yelling, "You're a racist!" So that's another thing. So everything's very complicated, but you understand there's a very strong parallel between what's going on in Israel politically and that type of thing and what's going on in the United States. This is another article. This is from Jonathan Spire. Again, one of the great analysts of the Middle East. The growing threat from facing Israel from Iraq. Oh, wait a minute. Everybody's only talking about Iran. Why are we talking about Iraq now? Essentially, to make a long story short, what's happening, go read it, Friday Jerusalem Post. Israel, Iraq, has been taken over by Iran. And what Iran has been doing is they have all these militias that they're funding. And they've been working on this since the fall of Saddam Hussein in 1991, and even before. They have got, like, at the number 3 person in almost all of these militias is now an Iranian that is in charge of human resources and hiring for that particular militia. And it's a way that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has consolidated its control. And they've become a very centralized organization that's controlling all of these militias. This is a relatively recent development over the last decade under Soleimani and others. Here's the concluding paragraph from Jonathan's article. Hence, whatever the origins and seriousness of Khatib al-Sabakhan's message, he's the leader of one of these Hezbollah type of militias, and the statement by Netanyahu that preceded it, Iraq is already part of the northern crescent of threats facing Israel. The U.S. president's and broader U.S. policy regarding Iran makes Israeli action in Iraq more complicated than similar actions in Syria or potentially in Lebanon, because we have troops there and bases. As Israeli planners assess the Gaza events of recent weeks, in light of the key scenario of a future war from the north, the growing threat from Iraq is likely to be a significant factor in their deliberations. And this sort of sounds like Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38, 39 rolled into one. Here's an article from, I think this is the Jordanian newspaper, El Gad. You know, so you always see behind the title they have the Dome of the Rock, because that's sort of like central to all of their thinking. The title of this is The Plight of Iraq, a State of Dependence, Corruption, and Militia. And here's some of the media things. These are things that I just found on the Ayatollah Khamenei's website this week. Some of the images that he's using. That's the U.S. Capitol, by the way, on fire. That's from January 6th, but that's not what it looked like. They've enhanced that. This is kind of an interesting thing too. This is the Dome of the Rock, and you see everybody praying here. And they're facing, well, they think they're facing Mecca, but they're really facing Petra, but that's another story. But you see Nasrallah here in the front row. Now there are reports that he has COVID. Now they're saying he might only have pneumonia. You see Hania there, the head of Hamas in Gaza, who lives in Qatar, by the way. Sometimes he goes to Syria. I don't think he ever goes to Gaza. You see Ghani there in the green to the left, sort of in the front. He's the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Then you have a Nigerian guy to his left, your right. And then you see way in the third row back there, that's Bashar Assad, the head of Syria. Now, Iranian watchers think Assad's been pushed back there because he's causing Iran a lot of headaches. So he's banished to the third row. And then in the front row, just in front of him, is the head of the Houthis in Yemen. So he's moved up to the second row. And you would see this if you see the order of people who are standing at a funeral like for Soleimani. You can kind of figure out who's in, who's out, who's not a favorite son right now. But you understand, this is part of the Ayatollah Khomeini's. But look at the clouds. Did you notice the cloud there overlooking everything? That's Soleimani. You see that? So you have to understand this. They really reveal a lot through their imagery. Here's another image. Of course, you can see this is the shape of the Dome of the Rock and the resistance. Here's another one. This is the in his spirit, Soleimani is commanding the continuation of the battle for Jerusalem, because you see the hand that was about all that was left of him after the attack with his ring on it. He's handing off. Here's other pictures that are there. They named one of their rockets the Qassam after Soleimani. Here's another conference that they have coming up. This is another one of the jihadi Hamas speakers. Here's another. This is sort of how they view the militia support, all the militia supports for the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. Unity is the main weapon, Supreme Leader Khomeini's message to the Palestinian people after the Gaza victory in a graphic posted on his website. The symbols of the Axis of Resistance organization support Jerusalem. Khomeini said today, unity is the main weapon of the Palestinians. The enemies of Palestinian unity are the Zionist regime, U.S. forces, and others. If Palestinian unity is maintained, all their attempts to break that unity will fail. And then here's another one. You see all the flags of the countries that support this jihad against Jerusalem. And then here are a picture of the martyrs, the Al-Aqsa in the background. Soleimani, of course, is central to all of this. The head of so these are all martyrs, 4 old guys, Ahmad Mugninya from Hezbollah, Abdulaziz al-Rantisi from Hamas, Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes from the Iraqi militias, and of course, Soleimani. In his Quds Day speech a couple weeks ago, Khomeini said that even after their fruitful and blessed life with their martyrdom, each of these personalities exerted a deep impact on the resistance. Resistant martyrs have managed to increase the internal power of the Palestinian jihad by 100 times. One day, the Palestinian youth used to defend themselves by throwing stones, but today they respond to an enemy attack with precision missiles. So this is causing a lot of concern. This is the head of Hamas that actually lives in Gaza. I suspect that he said the next war will change the Middle East. Probably, he may be right. I think the goal of Israel would be that not many Hamas leaders get gray hair, get to the age where they have gray hair like him. Egypt's coming back. They're lined up with Qatar now. They're sending in equipment. Low-cost armed drones reshape war and geopolitics. Russian-backed forces struggled against them in Syria and Libya. So this asymmetrical warfare is changing the equation of how things are done on the ground. Now, that's another article I forgot. Male inmates in women's prisons in California. Go read about it. It'll absolutely shock you. Cryptocurrency donations are boosting Hamas. Okay, here's some more. These are from Jordan on the right, Lebanon on the left papers, talking about the resistance. And there's still ongoing clashes throughout Judea and Samaria around Jerusalem and in majority Arab cities. This is also the anniversary, and this was a theme in a lot of the Arab papers this week. These are pictures of events that happened at the Six-Day War, which started 74 years ago today, June 6, 1967. And it ended up with the retaking of the Temple Mount, reunification of the city of Jerusalem, and this is the theme in a lot of the Arab papers this week, the tragic memories of a mock war that culminated in the occupation of what remained of Palestine. And the article goes on to say, it's really unfair that Israel only lost 240 lives in that war and we lost thousands. Because that's disproportionate, you understand? Just like the implication from some of these tweets from some of the squad in Congress, that it's unfair that Israel doesn't shoot down the rockets that aren't going to make it out of Gaza. They only shoot down the rockets that make it across the border. So this is I've talked about this before. This is Tel El Ful in Jerusalem, one of the highest points in Jerusalem. It's got a fantastic view from it. So you need to understand what this building, I've talked about this. This is biblical Gibeah. Gibeah was the capital of the tribe of Benjamin. Who was the most prominent person in the tribe of Benjamin? Guy named Saul. Well, who was Saul? Saul was the first king of Israel. This is his home, ancestral home. And in 1965, King Hussein of Jordan started building a summer palace, a phenomenal palace, right on top of the tribe of Benjamin, land where the first king of Israel came from. Now, do you think King Hussein was trying to send a message by that? He was sending a couple messages. First of all, he was given the kingdom of Transjordan. That was east of the Jordan River. What's he doing building in Jerusalem? He was occupying the land. Was there a single UN resolution calling him an occupier of Jerusalem? No. Not a single one. So he built, you can see this, when you drive up into the Samaria, northern Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, you'll go past this. A lot of people don't know what it is, but it's the unfinished palace. It started in 1965. It was going to be like the second capital for King Hussein. He still considers it his land. Jordan still considers it their land today. Nobody, does a boss call King Abdullah II an occupier by claiming he still owns this land? And it was to send a message. And it stopped because of what happened 74 years ago with the Six-Day War. Interesting story. So this is an article from Seth Frantzman in Jerusalem Post magazine talking about the attack on the Osiris reactor in Iraq in 1981. Phenomenal story. Nobody had ever tried to bomb a nuclear reactor before. They didn't even know what was going to happen. It wasn't quite finished. They sent some planes. They dropped their fuel tanks, just like they did when they bombed the Syrian reactor along the Euphrates River in 2007, 6 or 7. And it tells the story of how the Israeli pilots, including one of the youngest guys in the Israeli Air Force, who later was an astronaut on one of the U.S. space shuttle missions that crashed on re-entry. Not the first one, but the second one. But Seth's article is great on this. And the reason why you should look at it is because it tells you sort of the thought process that the Israeli military goes through and how they analyze what they're going to do and why they're going to do it. Here's what I couldn't find. This is the U.S. Embassy in the Vatican this week. You proud of that? I'm not. This also, as I said, my things are a little bit out of order. The cyber threat to America's beef shut down the biggest meat processor. There's a big, last year the World Economic Forum did a thing called Cyber Polygon, which was a simulated cyber attack on multiple aspects of society and business, and they're doing another one in July. I'll play a video of that next week, or if I do a midweek update, I'm going to try to do one this week. This is an article from Haaretz, which is a left-wing magazine, but it says, Israel's fatal weakness against the Iran's axis of resistance. This is the Houthi leader saying Muslim nations must mobilize against Israel to remove it from Palestinian territories. And then there were also these problems that were taking place in Iran this week with these explosions and whatnot. This was some pictures from an explosion this morning at a steel factory, steel mill in Iran. Where's that? And they had their largest ship, the engine room blew up and the ship sank. It was about a 700-foot long ship, largest ship in the Iranian Navy. And then shortly after that, they had a large refinery in Tehran exploded. And I mean, it was pretty dramatic. Let's see. By the way, these problems are common. Here's an article from the Times of London. Council set to sue Patel over child migrant crisis in the UK. They have all these children coming in across the channel in boats. And the little picture down there on the left, those are boats that they're storing. Those were boats that people had commandeered to come over. And this is an article from the Times of London. Bidenomics is driving change. The jobless are staying home in the land of free checks. And then here's the thing of Boris Johnson, because they're starting to lock things down in the UK again. In the unlikely event that we reach our destination, there's no guarantee you'll get home again. So, all these, goodness. Let me just... So I would highly recommend, Caroline Glick does an hour each week on the Middle East. She usually posts it on Wednesday or Thursday. CarolineGlick.com. And she talks about one of her recent articles. This is from May 26th. Hadi Amir's Middle East. He's one of the main Biden administration people in charge of Middle East policy. He wrote for the Brookings Institute, he wrote this long paper called Ending Gaza's Perpetual Crisis. In that, he essentially says the way to do this is essentially try to remake Hamas. We can salvage Hamas. But it says here, what Caroline says, in plain English, a mere solution for the widespread infiltration of the Palestinian terrorist affiliates and Palestinian government in both the Judea and Samaria and Gaza is to change the law to permit greater U.S. sanctioned cooperation with terrorists or terrorist-backed entities operating there. Amir also called for the U.S. to reinstate the funding of UNRWA. Unfortunately, this policy itself is legally questionable since more than half, and some say up to 90% of UNRWA employees in Gaza are members of Hamas. So, Amir's plan has 3 comments. Effectively accept Hamas as a legitimate actor, despite the fact that it's controlled by Iran. Second, call for the PLO-controlled Palestinian Authority to unite with Hamas and give the Palestinian Authority a free pass for supporting and funding terrorism. And finally, in regard to Israel, Amir's report called for the U.S. to use direct and indirect means to coerce Israel into making unreciprocated concessions to both Hamas and the PA, even while admitting such concessions would endanger Israel. And you can see the actual language in the report that this would potentially cause a problem. Here's what it says. For Europe, provide economic and political incentives and disincentives for Israel as a part of a Gaza package. Crazy. Danny Gantz went to the U.S. this week. They asked for funding. Tony Blinken was there. The whole thing is just, well, it's adopting the Obama administration's things. And Obama came out, he did an interview last week where he said 90% of the people in the Biden administration are my people. Well, that's a big surprise. I was shocked to hear that. Just 90%? Ideologically, it's over 100. Oh, this is also, now they're talking about a world tax. This is the people at the EU, in the European Union at a summit, talking about this. Egypt and Qatar are back together. So one more thing. Here's from the IDF. They're doing an exercise in Italy first. And the title of their thing is, what they say is, for the first time, they're doing an all-in exercise outside. But also what happened this week in the Golan Heights, up here along the Alpha line, this is the Bravo line, that's on the Syrian side of the Golan Heights no man's land. Somehow the Syrians set up a post over here west of the Alpha line. So Israel, they have a thing that says, while they slept, fighters of the 401st Infantry blew up a Syrian observation post. And you can see them here. What they're doing is they're getting ready to blow up this post. This is at night, by the way. That's why it's, oh, there they go. They got it. And they said, so we're taking care of it. But that was kind of an unprecedented operation. This deserves a whole thing of its own. The Third Lebanon War is the title of the article in Israel Hayom. You can find the English language version. I'll try to put a link in the notes. You should go read this. The companion piece would be from the INSS report that I've talked about, the next war in the north, and talking about how they're planning to handle this, what's going on. So when Seth Frantzman, he talks about the bombing of the reactor, they talk about what happened in the first and second Lebanon wars. They talk about other things that Israel has done, because they're trying to figure out how do we handle this. And as Seth says in his article, the Iron Dome's not going to last forever. It has a shelf life, and so they have to be prepared for the next war, because this asymmetrical war is coming in like crazy, and it needs to be dealt with. Here's the Iranian ship going down. Had fire. By the way, there are two ships on the way to the just past the Cape of Good Hope. They were photographed by satellite in an Iranian port back in April. They're on their way, it's reported, to Venezuela. And what do they have there on the deck? Fast attack craft and a helipad. I'm sure nothing's untoward is going on with this. I'm sure they're just doing this to help out their friends in Venezuela. Anyway, go read this article. I'll try to talk about it in a midweek update, because this has gone on too long again. Listen, we live in very interesting times. We think we're getting further down the road. In the meantime, you need to stand fast. As it says in Romans, act like men. With all their 50 genes, their 50 Y genes. But there's a reason Paul said that. We need to stand up to this. I'm not saying we would change it or make it better, but we need to stand up for the truth. Speak the truth in love, share the gospel. Let's pray. Father, thank you for your word. We pray that you'll bless us this week. Pray you'll keep us safe. Pray you'll watch over us. In Jesus' name, amen.